Quincy with Coin Club Crypto. Welcome to my channel. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and talk about it with your friends if you like the topics we have to talk about. Now, today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic. It's going to be a little bit more advanced than the typical topics we talk about. We're going to be talking about packaging crypto equities. And what does that mean? Now, most people are familiar with like traditional equities, and they usually like to talk about businesses or package financial instruments, but we're going to look at crypto equities and what the future of crypto equities may look like. Well, what's a crypto equity? Well, a crypto equity is essentially a token that represents some form of ownership over another object. So a good example of a crypto equity could be an NFT title, creating an NFT off the title of a home would be a perfect example of that. Or basically incorporating your company and then issuing your stock. Or even just packaging a set of equity tokens in, let's say, a liquidity pool or a masternode, and then off the revenue of that liquidity pool or masternode, you could have a smart contract essentially issue payments to the equity holders. And we'll get more into that because that's really what it's going to look like in the future for a lot of these technologies. So, first things first. Well, what's the deal with crypto equities? Why do I think this is going to be a huge thing? Well, first off, it's already a huge thing in the financial markets, and the crypto markets will just add further liquidity to the type of financial instruments that you could package here. So what ends up happening is yeah, you can actually package regular equities on decentralized networks, but is there a way you could package essentially crypto projects or crypto asset or decentralized autonomous organizations, whatever? Is there a way you could package that as an equity in which the equity holders can get a return based off the enterprise use case of whatever that may be? In this scenario, we'll use masternodes and liquidity pools. Well, the thing about that ends up being interesting is never before have we had a system in which you can create automated equities like so simply. You know, when it comes to any traditional equity, the main reason why we have a lot of these regulations involved is because a lot of people have to do a lot of reporting, and then they have to go through and make sure that the reporting is accurate, and then make sure there's so much of that. So what happens if you're able to do that all programmatically and all automatically, and instead of having to sit there and submit all these forms in regards to what's happening, you can essentially have it all regulated through a smart contract. Now, why would you essentially do this rather than the traditional method? Well, this ends up being quite interesting because it's something like a smart contract. Let's say we use a traditional equity type, right? And let's say I incorporated my company and you guys are all the shareholders of this company. Well, normally, whenever it came down to issuing dividends, whenever it came down to reporting revenue, whenever it came down to all that stuff, there's a bunch of what's the best way to put it? There's definitely a huge reporting and regulatory structure that you have to abide by. And all I'm saying with this is you can essentially automate those. So let's say this equity I had, and you all of my equity holders, it was returning, let's say, $1 million a year or whatever it may be. Well, in terms of a traditional equity, I would have to go through the reporting and then do the paperwork and do everything I can to have it make sure it's issued to the right accounts, and then have a whole accounting method to make sure their bank accounts are issued. It'd be a huge thing. With crypto, it can essentially be programmatic because what ends up happening is the smart contract can read the blockchain, see which accounts hold these crypto equities, and then automatically deliver their dividend payments over these decentralized networks directly to their wallets. And then what can end up happening too is all those regulatory concerns like taxes and audits, all that can be going through the smart contract. And it ends up being super great because now you can create these automated systems for equities in which people can essentially have, and here's the beauty of this, to where people can essentially have easy access to buying and sell equities, but also programmatically get returns on the equities that they bought and sold. So what ends up happening is if I wanted to sell you an equity that had a monthly return of, let's say, $20, right? Well, normally there'd be a whole process in trying to make sure that the accounts are set up, the dividends, blah, blah, blah. The second I sold that equity to you and the smart contract was going to issue the dividends, it doesn't matter who owns what. It's just going to go looking on the chain, see where does that equity rely in what wallet, and then pay it out to them. So what ends up happening is you're able to easily transgress equities to multiple parties and then be able to have those dividends follow the party with the equity because it's all programmatic on these decentralized networks. Now, this ends up being super, super cool because you can essentially automate the equities market and it's going to change the game. But let's forget the equities market for a second and go into the crypto equities market. This is going to be Wall Street 2.0. I keep trying to say this. I'm telling you, it's Wall Street 2.0. All the people that are already doing this stuff on Wall Street, they'll start using crypto technology to start automating that, and it's going to be on a whole nother level. So with crypto equities, what do we got here? So let's look at 3 different types of crypto equities that I think are going to be hugely popular probably in the next few years, but it can really come down to anything. So the first one is, we'll say masternode equities. And you actually see a lot of this now. Same thing with liquidity pool equities, but you don't really see them in the way that I envision them. You mostly see them as sort of a staking platform in a sense, and I don't like that because, well, it's sort of like, it's like banking basically. It's like, oh yeah, I trust you to give you some of my capital. I hope I give it back. And the reason why I like the equity portion is it's all bounded by the smart contract. So if anything were to happen, you would just get less and less returns, and you would still hold the value of the equity, not just get oh yeah, sorry, that money we had, yeah, we don't have it. And don't get me wrong, that same sort of thing could happen, but you have the equity value, so you can liquidate the equity and you can get some form of value back. That's the whole point, where a lot of these platforms don't have anything like that in play today. It's mostly just trust me, bro. And I don't like that. I like the idea of decentralized autonomous organizations. I like the idea of packaging smart contracts in a manner for equities. And I like the idea of being able to do all that programmatically. Now, the third one is just smart contract equities. And all that would be is if I took a smart contract that did an automated process. Let's say I had a smart contract that was a calculator, and a bunch of schools started using this calculator. And I have, you guys are my equity holders. Every single time the calculator gets executed, and let's say they pay, 0.001 cent or whatever. Every single time the calculator gets executed, that payment that went into that calculator, went into that equity, would already be setting itself up accounting wise inside the smart contract to account for taxes, to account for who gets issued what equity, or who gets issued what dividend, how much based off of how much equity. All of that is contained into the smart contract. And because all that is contained into the smart contract, anybody can operate anywhere on the network and basically be able to jump from equity to equity and still programmatically get the returns without essentially going through all these jumps and hurdles and middlemen to do so. So this ends up being really, really, really cool. So with masternodes, I think masternodes are going to be the first crypto equities that we're going to see come into the mainstream, mostly because hosting masternodes are popular. There's a lot of adoption, and we're still in that adoption growth phase. So you're going to see a lot of nodes come online, and that's why you're going to see people opening up masternodes, people sorting the network, people doing a bunch of things. So that's one way to do it. Then we've got the liquidity pools. Now, liquidity pools are going to come into play second, because what's going to happen is, and I actually did another video about this before, but when you start having certain pools of, let's say, certain pools of capital, whether it's central bank digital currencies or privately issued stable coins, what can end up happening is you need liquidity between multiple asset pairs. So what you can end up doing is you can essentially have a liquidity pool that's, let's say, 50% US dollars, and the other 50% is a mixture of a bunch of other different cryptos. And hell, maybe they're even a mixture of a bunch of other stocks too. Well, what could end up happening is that liquidity pool can be packaged as an equity. The equity holders can get their equity. The liquidity pool can tap into other smart contracts. So smart contracts need easy access to capital. And in essence, the whole point of this would be it's easy access, it's quick, it's cheap. And the whole point of a liquidity pool is so people don't have to go through an exchange to get this. It'd be way cheaper. It'd be a lot more scalable, and it'd be more of an on-demand thing. So if you wanted to pull $5 out, if you want to pull $5 out, or $5 million, or $5 billion, whatever, you could sort of scale it a bit better depending on how big your pool is. But I think that's going to be a big thing too, because I think you're going to see decentralized liquidity pools on decentralized exchanges take over how a lot of exchanges operate. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean exchanges are going to go away. They'll operate on decentralized exchanges. That's not the big thing. I think the big thing is just kind of yanking a lot of power from a lot of these centralized controls, because, well, anybody can essentially create a smart contract equity pool and, or liquidity pool, and be able to, don't get me wrong, you have to provide the capital and you need the resources to do it. But the barrier to entry to do it is significantly lower than it was before. Before, if you wanted to compete as an exchange or compete in any regard like that, you would have to build your own exchange, get the user base, all that. Here, you can essentially have a competitive software as a service company in which you go, hey, we're just a liquidity pool. If you want to tap in for easy, cheap liquidity, here, we're good. And that's the thing. You'll see it. You'll see a ton of people go, oh, yeah, that's great. I need liquidity between these 3 assets or these 2 assets or whatever. And it's hard. It's expensive to go through the exchanges. So it's something to think about. But last, and this is where decentralized autonomous organizations are going to come into play, because this is what's really going to set the stage for those, is packaging those smart contracts. Now, the thing that's interesting about packaging those smart contracts is, let's look at it one for now. I said the calculator example, but the interesting about the smart contracts is that you can continuously build on top of them. So let's say with the calculator example, I built the calculator, right? And I have equity holders for that calculator. Cool. So let's say I wanted to improve upon that calculator, and not only does it take, basic calculations, but let's say it has like a texting platform built in, so you could send your math problems over the network. I don't know. You say it's got something like that, and because let's say there's some business need that needs to be able to transpire multiple different means of, I don't know, calculating math, whatever it may be. The whole point is you have a smart contract and you stick another smart contract next to it. So what ends up happening is you just increase the value of the first smart contract by adding an additional automation with the second smart contract. So if I was holding equity in the first smart contract as a decentralized autonomous organization, the mere fact that a new update for that smart contract came out could actually increase the value of my equity due to the fact that the smart contracts are able to do more and more and more. And just like you would invest in a company and the company's value would go up, you can invest in a decentralized autonomous organization through a series of smart contracts. And as more and more gets built on top of it, and as more and more people start using it, you can have your own form of value within these equities. And those value will continue going up due to the use case. And you will see the same way you see these stock market equities get passed. You will see entire crypto market equities. And don't get me wrong, it's not like they're going to be on Coinbase. They may be, but they'll literally be on a lot of these equity platforms, but just as crypto equities. Because a lot of people need to remember this, that cryptocurrencies aren't like they aren't the last thing. There's so many things that come into fruition, crypto equities being one of them. But it's something to really think about, because it's going to change the game in how we interact with each other in regards to decentralized organizations, in regards to automating equity dividends, in regards to live auditing. It's so insane. But it's kind of my little spiel, kind of going on about crypto equities, where the future is going to be, and sort of what they are. It's sort of meant to be a brain teaser to sort of get you guys into the mindset. This topic is, I kind of just gave you a seed for this topic, because this topic's going to turn to a multi-trillion-dollar industry. It's just a matter of when, and it's just a matter of who's able to capitalize off of these markets and capitalize off of these technologies to provide these services. It's not going to be anything like, I don't even consider it that revolutionary. The technology is already revolutionary. So the fact that people are using it for previous business needs to provide future innovations is not new. And it's so weird to say, like, it's not crazy. It's inevitable. And I think a lot of people are focused on sort of like a lot of the things that are in the media and a lot of the hype that's around. So you don't really see a lot of these topics get brought up. But I kind of want to change that. I want to bring up topics that people don't normally think about or talk about, because I think they're going to be inevitable. I think they're going to be the future. I think they're going to be way bigger than people could ever even imagine, because of, well, you're essentially creating new markets, and then you're taking assets from these previous markets and you're automating them in these new markets. It's pretty sick. But I hope you like what I had to say. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.